Imagine this, my friends, a moment so raw it could shatter the world you thought you knew. Picture a man, a titan of industry, standing in the sleek glass office of his empire, his tailored suit crisp, his jaw set, but his hands trembling. This is James Caldwell, a 45-year-old CEO whose name commands boardrooms, whose wealth could buy cities. But tonight, he's not here for power. He's staring into the eyes of a young woman, Sophie, a 22-year-old tutor he hired for his adopted son, Noah. She's poised, her voice steady as she explains Noah's progress, but her eyes, those deep, hazel eyes flecked with gold, stop him cold. They're not just any eyes. They're hers. They're Clara's, the woman he loved and lost 20 years ago, the woman whose memory still haunts his sleepless nights. His breath catches, the room tilts, and the polished veneer of his life cracks. "It's not possible," he whispers, his voice breaking, barely audible over the hum of the city beyond the windows. Sophie pauses, her brow furrowing, but James can't hear her. He's drowning in a flood of memories, of a love he buried, of a truth he never dared face. How can this young woman, this stranger, carry the gaze of the woman he failed? What secret has been hiding in the shadows of his past? The office is a fortress of glass and steel, its walls reflecting the glittering skyline, but James feels exposed, as if the world is watching. He hired Sophie a month ago, a decision born of necessity. Noah, his 8-year-old adopted son, was struggling in school, his quiet demeanor masking a sharp mind that needed guidance. James had chosen Sophie from a stack of resumes, impressed by her credentials, a literature graduate, glowing references, a calm confidence. But now, as she stands before him, her hazel eyes catching the golden light of the desk lamp, he sees Clara in every detail, the way her lashes frame her gaze, the way her head tilts when she's thinking. Clara, who vanished from his life 20 years ago, leaving only a letter and a void he could never fill. His chest tightens, a familiar ache he's carried since he was 25, when ambition and fear tore them apart. He wants to ask Sophie who she is, where she's from, but the words stick, trapped behind years of regret. Instead, he forces a nod, muttering, "Thank you, Sophie. That's all for tonight." She hesitates, sensing something off, then gathers her bag and leaves, her footsteps echoing in the silent office. As the door clicks shut, James sinks into his chair, his hands gripping the armrests as if to anchor himself. The city hums below, indifferent to the storm inside him. He thinks back to this morning, when he stood in his penthouse, staring at a faded photograph of Clara. Her smile, captured in a moment of summer light, was his only keepsake, tucked away in a drawer he rarely opened. He'd built an empire since then, a life of control and conquest, but without her, it was hollow. Adopting Noah 2 years ago was his attempt to fill that void, to honor Clara's dream of a family they'd once planned. Noah's quiet strength, his love for stories, felt like a gift, a way to keep her memory alive. But now, Sophie's eyes have shattered that fragile piece. They're not just similar, they're Clara's, down to the way they seem to see through him, to know him in ways no one else ever could. His pulse races, questions clawing at him. Clara couldn't have had a daughter, she'd been 23 when they parted, and he'd never heard from her again. Or had he missed something? Had she hidden a life he never knew? The photograph of Clara sits on his desk now, pulled from its hiding place. He traces her face, her hazel eyes staring back, and feels the weight of 20 years. They'd been young, reckless, in love in a way that felt invincible. But he was a scholarship kid, clawing his way through business school, and she was a dreamer, painting murals and writing poetry. Their worlds clashed, his ambition, her wanderlust, and when he landed an internship that demanded everything, he let her slip away. "We're better apart," he'd said, his voice cold, though his heart screamed otherwise. She'd left a letter, her words simple but searing, "I'll always love you, but I can't wait for you to choose me." He'd thrown himself into work, into success, believing time would dull the pain. But it never did. Now, Sophie's presence feels like a reckoning, a ghost from that letter come to life. He grabs his phone, tempted to call his investigator, but hesitates. What is he even searching for? Proof that Sophie is Clara's daughter? Proof that she isn't? The locket in his drawer catches his eye, a silver oval Clara gave him, engraved with "Forever." It's empty now, but it feels alive, pulsing with questions. The next morning, Noah is at the breakfast table, sketching a dragon, his pencil scratching softly. James watches him, searching for Clara in his features, but Noah's dark eyes are his own, a reminder of the boy's origins in foster care. "How's Miss Sophie?" James asks, keeping his tone light. Noah brightens. "She's awesome. She reads me stories like Mom used to." The word "mom" lands like a stone, though Noah means his foster mother, long gone. James forces a smile, but his mind churns. "What's she like?" he presses, leaning closer. Noah shrugs, still drawing. "She's nice. She knows a lot about stars." James freezes. Clara loved constellations, would point them out on summer nights, her voice soft as she named them. It's a coincidence, he tells himself, but his hands shake as he pours coffee. He needs answers, but Sophie is a stranger, a professional he can't interrogate without cause. Yet those eyes demand he try. That evening, Sophie arrives for Noah's lesson, her satchel slung over her shoulder. James lingers in the living room, pretending to work, but his eyes follow her. She's patient with Noah, her laughter soft as they discuss a book. When she glances up, catching his gaze, he looks away, his heart pounding. "Mr. Caldwell," she says later, as Noah runs to grab a pencil, "is everything okay? You seemed distracted last night." Her voice is gentle, but her eyes, Clara's eyes, pierce him. He wants to blurt out the truth, to ask if she knows Clara, if she's her daughter, but he can't. Instead, he says, "Just a long day. Noah's lucky to have you." She smiles, but there's a flicker of something, curiosity, maybe, or recognition. As she leaves, he notices a bracelet on her wrist, a thin leather cord with a single bead. It's familiar, too familiar, and his stomach twists. Clara had one just like it, a gift from her mother. He closes the door behind her, his mind racing, and pulls the locket from his pocket. "Clara," he whispers, "what did you leave behind?" The city pulses outside, but James is lost in the past. In the summer he let Clara go. He was 25, chasing a future he thought he needed, and she was a dreamer he couldn't hold on to. Her letter had been his punishment, her absence his regret. Now, Sophie is here, her eyes a mirror to that loss, and he can't ignore the pull. He calls his investigator, his voice low. Find out everything about Sophie Harper. Her family, her past, her mother. Now. The call ends, and he stares at the locket, its engraving glinting in the light. Somewhere, in the shadows of his life, a truth is waiting, a truth that could destroy everything he's built, or finally give him peace. But for now, he's a man on the edge, caught between a love he lost and a daughter he might have found, with no map to guide him but the eyes that won't let him go. Let's step back, my friends, to a time when the world felt softer, when James Caldwell was not yet the titan he is today, but a young man chasing dreams too big for his heart to hold. Picture a summer 20 years ago, the air thick with heat, the city alive with possibility. James is 25, a scholarship student in business school, his eyes burning with ambition, his days filled with lectures and late-night study sessions. He's hungry, not just for success, but for a life that proves he's more than the kid from a broken home. And then there's Clara, 23, a painter with hazel eyes that catch the light like stars, her laughter a melody that makes the world feel kind. They meet by chance, in a crowded bookstore, her fingers brushing his as they reach for the same poetry collection. Her smile is shy, her voice soft, and in that moment, James feels something he's never known, a pull, a warmth, a sense that she could be his home. The bookstore is a haven of worn wood and dusty pages, its shelves towering over them as they talk. Clara is a dreamer, her words spilling like colors on a canvas, painting visions of a life unbound by rules. She tells him about her murals, her poetry, the way she finds stories in the stars. James, guarded and driven, is captivated, his usual defenses crumbling under her gaze. They linger until the shop closes, then walk the city streets, the neon lights reflecting in her hazel eyes. She points to the sky, naming constellations, Orion, Cassiopeia, and he listens, not because he cares about stars, but because her voice makes him want to believe in something bigger. They're opposites, he knows, his world is numbers and plans, hers is art and freedom, but that night, under a sky that feels infinite, he thinks they could be everything. Weeks turn to months, and their love grows fierce, reckless. They steal moments between his classes and her painting gigs, sharing coffee in cramped cafes, kissing in alleyways under flickering streetlights. Clara is his escape, the one person who sees past his ambition to the boy who's still afraid of failing. She gives him a locket, silver and engraved with "Forever," a promise she whispers against his lips. He wears it always, a weight against his chest that feels like hers. But the cracks are already forming, though he's too young to see them. His internship at a prestigious firm demands everything, late nights, weekends, his soul. Clara, with her free spirit, chafes at his growing distance, her hazel eyes clouding with hurt. "You're choosing them over us," she says one night, her voice trembling in their tiny apartment. He denies it, but the truth stings. He's building a future, he tells himself, for both of them. But Clara doesn't want his future, she wants him, now, fully. The fight comes on a humid August evening, the air heavy with unspoken fears. James is offered a permanent role at the firm, a ticket to the life he's dreamed of, but it means moving to London for a year. Clara begs him to stay, to choose her, but he's too stubborn, too scared of losing his chance. "We're better apart," he says, his voice cold to mask the ache in his chest. Her eyes, those hazel eyes, shimmer with tears, but she doesn't beg. She leaves a letter, her handwriting delicate but firm, "I'll always love you, but I can't wait for you to choose me." She's gone by morning, her side of the bed cold, her painting stacked against the wall. James tells himself it's for the best, that love is a luxury he can't afford. He throws himself into work, into London, into a life that buries her memory. But the locket stays with him, a silent regret he can't escape. Now, 20 years later, as James sits in his penthouse, Sophie's face haunts him, her hazel eyes a mirror to Clara's. He's back in that bookstore, that summer, feeling the weight of every choice he made. The locket is in his hand, its engraving worn but clear, and he wonders what Clara did after she left. Did she start over? Did she have a daughter? The thought is a knife, twisting with possibilities. He thinks of Sophie's bracelet, the leather cord with a single bead, so like the one Clara wore, a gift from her mother. It's too much to be coincidence, but too impossible to be true. Clara was 23 when they parted, and he'd heard nothing of her since, not a letter, not a whisper. Could she have built a life without him, raised a child, and left this young woman as her legacy? He paces the penthouse, the city skyline glittering beyond the glass, a reminder of all he's gained and lost. Sophie's resume lies on his desk, a sterile list of achievements that tells him nothing about her past. He's tempted to confront her, to demand answers, but what would he say? "Are you the daughter of the woman I loved?" It's absurd, yet those eyes, that bracelet, demand he dig deeper. He thinks of Noah, his adopted son, whose love for stories mirrors Clara's. Hiring Sophie was meant to help Noah, to give him the guidance James, consumed by work, couldn't provide. But now, Sophie feels like a bridge to a past he can't outrun. He recalls their meeting last week, when she arrived at the penthouse, her voice calm as she introduced herself. He'd been distracted, signing contracts, barely looking up. But when she mentioned teaching Noah about constellations, his heart had stuttered, a memory of Clara's starlit voice surfacing unbidden. The phone rings, jarring him from his thoughts. It's his investigator, Tom, his voice clipped. Got a preliminary on Sophie Harper, he says. Born 22 years ago, raised in a small town upstate. Mother deceased, no father listed. Records are thin, foster care for a bit before she was adopted. I'm digging deeper. James's grip tightens on the phone. Her mother, he says, his voice low. Find out who she was. Tom hesitates, sensing the urgency, then agrees. James hangs up, his mind racing. Deceased. The word is a punch, stealing his breath. If Clara is gone, if Sophie is her daughter, then he's lost her twice, once to his own foolishness, and now to time. But why would Clara hide a child? Why keep Sophie a secret? He thinks of her letter, its finality, and wonders if she'd wanted to protect him from a truth he wasn't ready for. As dawn breaks, James stands at the window, the locket warm in his palm. Sophie will be back today, teaching Noah, her hazel eyes filling the room with Clara's ghost. He doesn't know how to face her, doesn't know if he can bear the truth. But he knows he can't let this go, not when those eyes are here, in his home, demanding answers. He thinks of Clara's laughter, her paintings, the way she made him feel alive. If Sophie is her daughter, she's a piece of Clara, a chance to make things right. But the fear lingers, sharp and cold. What if the truth is darker than he can imagine? What if Clara's secrets are a wound he can't heal? The city wakes below, and James braces himself, a man caught between past and present, with only a locket and a pair of eyes to guide him. The rain is a quiet drumbeat against the penthouse windows, each drop a pulse in the silence that surrounds James Caldwell. It's been a week since Sophie's hazel eyes unraveled him, since the ghost of Clara began to haunt every corner of his life. The locket sits on his desk, its silver surface catching the golden glow of the lamp, a silent accusation. James is a man used to answers, to bending the world to his will, but now he's adrift, chasing shadows of a woman he lost 20 years ago. Sophie, the tutor he hired for his adopted son, Noah, is the key, or perhaps the lock, to a truth he's not sure he's ready to face. Her eyes, Clara's eyes, are a mirror to his regrets, and every moment she spends in his home tightens the knot in his chest. Tonight, he's alone, the city sprawling below, its lights blurred by the rain. He's waiting for Tom, his investigator, to call with more on Sophie's past, but the waiting is a torment, each second heavy with what he might find. James thinks back to yesterday, when Sophie sat with Noah in the living room, her voice soft as she read him a story about constellations. Noah was rapt, his dark eyes wide, and James lingered in the doorway, pretending to check emails. Her bracelet caught his eye again, the leather cord with a single bead, so like Clara's. He'd wanted to ask about it, to demand where she got it, but the words died in his throat. Instead, he'd watched her, searching for more of Clara and her movements, the way she tucked her hair behind her ear, the way her laughter carried a quiet strength. Noah had looked up, grinning, and said, "Miss Sophie knows all the stars, like a map." James's heart had clenched, memories of Clara's starlit nights flooding back. He'd mumbled an excuse and retreated to his study, unable to face her gaze. Now, as the rain falls, he wonders if he's seeing what he wants to see, or if Clara's presence is truly woven into this young woman. The phone buzzes, shattering the quiet. It's Tom, his voice low, cautious. "I've got more on Sophie Harper," he says. Her mother was listed as Jane Harper in the records, died 15 years ago when Sophie was 7. No birth certificate for Jane, no family ties. She showed up in a small town upstate 23 years ago, pregnant, alone. Kept to herself, worked as a waitress. There's a photo from the town's library archive, blurry, but she's got hazel eyes, long hair. "I'm sending it now." James's pulse spikes as the image arrives. The woman is young, her face half-turned, but those eyes, hazel, flecked with gold, are unmistakable. It's Clara, or someone so close it hurts to look. His hands shake as he zooms in, the bracelet on her wrist a faint blur but there, a leather cord with a bead. "Keep digging," he tells Tom, his voice hoarse. Find out why she was there, what happened to her. Tom agrees, and the call ends, leaving James staring at the photo, the past clawing its way into the present. He thinks of Clara's letter, tucked away in a drawer, its words burned into his memory, "I can't wait for you to choose me." 20 years ago, he'd let her go, choosing ambition over love, believing he could outrun the pain. She'd been 23, vibrant, her hazel eyes full of dreams. Could she have been pregnant when she left? The thought is a betrayal, a possibility he can't reconcile. They'd been careful, or so he thought, and she'd never hinted at a child. But the photo, the bracelet, Sophie's eyes, they're pieces of a puzzle he can't ignore. He pulls out the locket, opening it to find nothing inside, just the word "forever" etched in silver. It feels like a lie, a promise he broke. He wonders what Clara did after she left. Did she start over, raise Sophie alone, only to die too young? The word "deceased" from Tom's report is a wound, cutting deeper than he expected. If Clara is gone, if Sophie is her daughter, then he's failed her twice, leaving her to face a world he should have shared. The next day, Sophie arrives for Noah's lesson, her satchel slung over her shoulder, her smile warm but guarded. James is in the kitchen, pretending to read reports, but his eyes follow her. She kneels beside Noah, helping him with a drawing, and James notices a sketch on the table, a woman with long hair, holding a child's hand, her eyes large and hazel. His breath catches, the image too close to Clara's face. "Who's that?" he asks, his voice sharper than intended. Sophie glances up, startled, then looks at the drawing. "Just something Noah made," she says, but her fingers tighten on the paper, a flicker of unease in her gaze. Noah pipes up, "It's like Miss Sophie's mom. She told me her mom loved stars." James's heart stumbles, his vision narrowing. He wants to press, to ask Sophie about her mother, but Noah's presence stops him. Instead, he nods, forcing calm, and retreats to his study, the drawing burned into his mind. That evening, James meets Tom at a quiet diner, the rain still falling outside. Tom slides a folder across the table, his expression grim. "Found a nurse who worked at the town clinic where Jane Harper died," he says. "She remembers her, called her Clara, not Jane. Said she came in alone, pregnant, wouldn't talk about her past. Wore a bracelet, leather with a bead, and talked about stars to calm herself. Died of pneumonia, too stubborn to stay in the hospital long." James's throat tightens, his hands clenching the folder. "And Sophie?" he asks, barely audible. Tom shrugs. "Clara left her with a neighbor, then foster care. No records of a father." James opens the folder, finding a faded photo of a young woman, her hazel eyes piercing even in grainy black and white. It's Clara, no question, her bracelet clear on her wrist. He feels sick, the weight of her solitude crushing him. She'd been alone, raising a child, while he built an empire, oblivious to her struggle. Back at the penthouse, James sits in the dark, the locket in his hand, Clara's photo beside him. He thinks of their last fight, her tears, the way she'd looked at him like he was breaking her heart. "I can't wait for you," she'd written, and now he sees it wasn't just about love, it was about a life she had to protect, a daughter she couldn't tell him about. Why didn't she reach out? Was she afraid he'd reject her again, reject Sophie? The guilt is a tide, pulling him under, but it's tangled with anger, at himself, at fate, at the years stolen from them. He looks at Noah's drawing, still on the table, and feels Clara's presence, as if she's watching, waiting for him to decide. Sophie will be back tomorrow, her eyes carrying Clara's ghost, and James knows he can't stay silent. He needs to know who she is, why she's here, what Clara left behind. But the fear is sharp, a blade against his heart. What if the truth is a wound too deep to heal? The rain falls harder, and James closes his eyes, Clara's voice whispering through the years, naming stars he can no longer see. The city is quiet tonight, its usual clamor softened by a gentle fog that blankets the streets, as if the world itself is holding its breath. James Caldwell stands in the doorway of his penthouse, the locket clutched in his hand, its silver worn from days of restless holding. It's been 2 weeks since the nurse's words confirmed Clara's fate, since Sophie's hazel eyes became undeniable proof of a daughter he never knew. The truth has broken him open, peeling back the layers of the man he thought he was, a CEO, a conqueror, a father to Noah by choice but not by blood. Now, Sophie is a bridge to Clara, a living echo of the love he lost, and every moment she spends teaching Noah pulls him closer to a reckoning. The fog outside mirrors his mind, thick with questions, regrets, and a fragile hope he's afraid to name. Tonight, he's decided to act, to confront Sophie, to ask the question that's been burning since he saw her eyes. Are you Clara's daughter? The penthouse is warm, the golden light of the lamps casting soft shadows as Sophie arrives for Noah's lesson. Noah is at the dining table, his sketchbook open, and James lingers nearby, his heart pounding. He's planned this moment, rehearsed the words, but now, watching Sophie laugh with Noah, he feels unmoored. Her bracelet catches the light, the leather cord with its single bead, a relic of Clara's life. He thinks of the nurse's story, Clara, alone in a small-town clinic, singing about stars to calm her fears, dying too young to see Sophie grow. The guilt is a weight, heavier than the empire he's built, and he wonders if Sophie knows the truth, if she carries Clara's pain as he carries her absence. He steps forward, clearing his throat, and Sophie looks up, her hazel eyes meeting his. "Mr. Caldwell," she says, her voice steady but curious, "is something wrong?" He hesitates, the locket burning in his pocket, then says, "Can we talk? Alone?" They move to the study, the city a muted glow beyond the windows. Sophie sits, her hands folded, her gaze wary but open. James stands, the locket in his hand, and takes a breath, his voice low. "Sophie, I need to ask you something. About your mother." Her eyes flicker, a shadow crossing her face, but she nods. "What about her?" she asks, her tone guarded. He holds up the locket, its engraving glinting. "Did she ever have one like this? A silver locket, engraved with, forever?" Sophie's breath catches, her fingers touching her bracelet as if for comfort. "How do you know about that?" she whispers, her voice trembling. James's heart races, the room shrinking to the space between them. "Because I gave it to a woman named Clara, 20 years ago. A woman with eyes like yours." Sophie's face pales, her hands gripping the chair, and for a moment, neither speaks, the silence thick with unspoken truths. "I don't understand," Sophie says finally, her voice breaking. "My mother was Jane Harper. She died when I was 7. She never mentioned anyone named Clara." James steps closer, his voice urgent. "Jane was the name she used, but her real name was Clara. I loved her, Sophie. We were together, until I let her go. And now, seeing you, your eyes, your bracelet, I think you're her daughter." Sophie shakes her head, tears welling, but her gaze doesn't leave the locket. "That's impossible," she says, though her voice wavers. "She would have told me. She kept a locket, but it was empty. She said it was from someone she lost." James's throat tightens, the weight of Clara's solitude crashing over him. He kneels before her, holding out the locket. "This was hers. I gave it to her, promised her forever. But I failed her. And if you're her daughter, I failed you too." Sophie takes the locket, her fingers trembling, and opens it, finding nothing inside, just like Clara's. Her tears fall, silent, and James feels his own eyes burn. Sophie stands, pacing, her voice rising. "Why didn't she tell me? Why hide who she was?" James rises, his hands outstretched, helpless. "I don't know. Maybe she was protecting you, from me, from the life I chose. I was young, selfish, and I let her go. She left me a letter, said she couldn't wait for me. I didn't know she was pregnant." Sophie stops, her eyes searching his, and the truth settles, heavy but undeniable. I grew up thinking I had no one, she says, her voice raw. Foster homes, strangers, until I was adopted. And you were out there, all this time. The accusation in her words cuts, but James doesn't flinch. I didn't know, he says, his voice breaking. But I'm here now, Sophie. I want to know you, to be part of your life, if you'll let me. She looks away, her tears falling faster, and the fog outside seems to seep into the room, blurring the edges of their pain. Noah's voice breaks the silence, calling from the living room, and Sophie wipes her eyes, forcing a smile. I need time, she says, her voice soft but firm. This is too much. James nods, his heart aching, and watches her return to Noah, her bracelet glinting as she moves. He sinks into his chair, the locket still warm in his hand, and thinks of Clara's letter, her stars, the life they could have had. He spends the night awake, the city fog a shroud, replaying Sophie's words, her tears. He thinks of Noah, his adopted son, whose love has taught him what family means, and vows to be better for Sophie, to earn her trust, no matter how long it takes. Weeks later, James stands outside a small community center, the fog long gone, the sky clear and bright. Sophie is inside, teaching a class for kids, her laughter carrying through the open door. He's been coming here, quietly, dropping off books, art supplies, anything to support her work without pushing. Today, he's brought Noah, who runs inside, clutching a drawing. James follows, his heart pounding, and sees Sophie kneel beside Noah, admiring his sketch, a family under a starry sky. She looks up, meeting James's eyes, and for the first time, there's no anger, only a quiet understanding. Noah said you've been helping, she says, standing, her bracelet catching the light. James nods, his voice low. I want to do right by you, Sophie. By Clara. She hesitates, then hands him Noah's drawing, her fingers brushing his. She'd like that, she says, her voice soft, her hazel eyes warm with something like forgiveness. They step outside, Noah running ahead, and James feels the locket in his pocket, now holding a tiny photo of Sophie and Noah, a new promise. The stars are faint above, but he hears Clara's voice, naming them, guiding him still. Sophie walks beside him, not as a stranger, not yet as a daughter, but as someone he's beginning to know. The city hums, alive with possibility, and James knows this is not an ending, but a beginning, one Clara gave him, through the eyes she left behind. He'll spend his days earning this chance, building a family from the ashes of what was lost, with love as his only map.